Hello fellow TuteTubers, it's Miss R here, and today we're going to be looking at Checking Out My History by John Agard. So, we're going to start off with some context. John Agard was born in Guyana in the Caribbean in 1949 and moved to the UK in 1977 with his partner and fellow poet Grace Nichols. Agard's poetry combines humour and defiance, and he is renowned as an energetic and powerful performance poet. One of the most notable characteristics of Agard's poetry is his use of non-standard phonetic spelling, which is written as word sounds, to reflect his own accent. Having been raised in what was, at the time, a British colony, and then having moved to the UK in the 70s, Agard has come face to face with racial discrimination, both explicit and implicit. One of the reasons the poet uses his own accent and dialect within his poetry is an act of defiance against the expected standard English of the establishment. It is a way of re-establishing his Caribbean culture and heritage. So what is the poem about? The narrator is talking about his identity and how it links to his knowledge of history. He was taught about British history but wasn't taught about his Caribbean roots. He lists famous figures from history and questions why he doesn't know about people from other cultures who did great things. He mentions men and women from diverse backgrounds who should be celebrated. At the end, he says he's going to create his own identity based on his heritage. So let's look at the meaning of the poem in detail. There is a popular expression that history is written by the victors. In other words, powerful nations such as Britain teach history from a biased viewpoint, with the emphasis placed firmly on the achievements of those who are white, British, and predominantly male. This would certainly seem to be the accusation of Checking Out My History. Agard levels his accusations in the sections which begin with "dem tell me." The repetition of "dem," which means them or they, creates a rebellious tone. The poet clearly believes that Western society can be divided into us, he and other outsiders, and them, the establishment. On the other hand, the tone of the poem in the indented sections contrasts with this accusatory tone. Recalling the names of historical figures from Afro-Caribbean history, the tone here is far more celebratory. Although the names he recalls, Toussaint Louverture, Nanny Maroon, Shaka Zulu and Mary Seacole, are relatively unknown as they are not often taught in British classrooms, Agard celebrates their achievements. However, he does not do as the British establishment have done and mention only those of his own cultural heritage. Agard also mentions the plight of the Caribs and Arawaks, which are the indigenous people of South America and the Caribbean, who were displaced and killed off in order to create the plantations where the captured African slaves were put to work. The poem challenges us to examine the authenticity of our history rather than take the facts at face value. It also suggests that we should redress the balance in terms of the kinds of historical figures we have traditionally focused on. Let's look at language. In the first section of the poem, Agard complains about only being shown what and want, in terms of this history that is widely taught and talked about. To demonstrate the fact that people are only given a very narrow focus on history, he uses words like bandage up, blind me. This also relates to the manner in which the slaves were held captive and in bonds. It suggests limitation of thoughts and actions on two different levels. Agard refers to the famous Battle of Hastings and the Norman conquest as 1066 and all that. This phrase suggests that these events are not important or relevant to Agard. Indeed, why should they be? They are ancient history and Anglo-Saxon history at that. Agard also employs the use of nursery rhymes alongside references to traditional British historical figures. Again, this suggests the unimportance of these figures and events. They are as trivial as stories told to children. There is also a suggestion that both nursery rhymes and British history are, to a greater or lesser extent, a fiction. In contrast, the language used to refer to Afro-Caribbean history is far more positive. In contrast to being made blind by white British history, these Afro-Caribbean historical figures evoke language such as vision and seafar woman. Agard also uses positive adjectives in describing these people such as great and healing. In the switch from them to I in the final section shows us Agard is finally reclaiming his own history and culture. Now I checking out my own history. Now let's look at structure. Checking out my history can be divided into two halves, each separated from the other by the use of different font and alternating indentation. The first of these uses mark repetition of the phrase, "them tell me about." There is a fairly regular rhyme scheme employed here, featuring a series of couplets, triplets and quatrains. These create a sense of more rigid order, in line with the more rigid black and white thinking of the British establishment. The indented italic sections dealing with Afro-Caribbean history do not, like the poet himself, conform to this order. Instead, they use a far more natural free verse and often feature abbreviation of speech, missing out words in the manner of Agard's native pidgin English. The use of phonetic spelling along with the shorter abbreviated lines of speech make these sections far less formal and far more relaxed and natural, perhaps reflecting Caribbean culture itself. The narrator uses a mixture of stanza forms, suggesting he's breaking the confining language rules he's being taught. The Caribbean history stanzas have shorter lines and are more broken syntax than the British history stanzas. This emphasises them and makes them seem more serious. The rhyme schemes are also different. The British stanzas have lots of simple rhymes, making them sound childish. Let's go through key themes, key feelings and attitudes, and just some other information. So key themes. The main theme is that of a division between the histories of us, those outside traditional British culture, and them, the traditional British establishment. The poem splits into two clear sections: the accusation that British history, as it is conventionally taught, is biased, and the celebration of the unsung heroes of Afro-Caribbean culture. Key feelings and attitudes. We've got anger. The narrator's angry because the education system didn't teach him about his culture. He was unaware of his heritage, even though it's an important part of who he is. Admiration. He respects the Caribbean figures he describes in the poem. He admires their achievements and wants to tell their stories to show the important role they played in history. And celebration. At the end, he says he will embrace his own identity in a positive way. Miscellaneous. So we've got metaphors of vision and blindness. The narrator says that his education kept his true heritage hidden from him. Images of light are positive because they suggest an awareness of your own identity. This poem is written as an oral poem. So the features of oral poetry are: the narrator uses techniques from oral poetry such as repetition, strong rhythms, chanting and phonetic spellings. This links the poem to the oral tradition of reciting poetry aloud and telling stories, which are used as ways of communicating history. The use of Caribbean phonetic spellings creates a sense of pride in his background, and the use of standard English in lines 46 to 49 emphasises that the figures from his Caribbean heritage should feature in the teaching of history. That's all for now, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!